liftoff of Falcon 9.
Good morning. It's Friday, August 7th, and you're looking at a live view of Falcon 9 as it awaits its 1:12 a.m. Eastern launch time from Pad 39A at Kennedy Space Center in Florida. This will be the first mission from this pad since we launched Bob and Doug to the International Space Station over 2 months ago. Hello from SpaceX headquarters in Hawthorne, California. My name is Yomezo, and I'm a Dragon Integration and Test Engineer here at SpaceX. You're watching a live webcast for our 10th Starlink mission, marking our 13th mission of 2020. To date, we've launched almost 540 Starlink satellites to orbit. As a reminder, Starlink is a constellation of satellites in low Earth orbit that can provide high-speed, low-latency internet all over the globe, particularly in remote or rural areas where connectivity is limited or completely unavailable. Today's launch will be a longer one, as we are reverting to a circular orbital insertion, which requires 2 burns of the Merlin vacuum engine on the second stage. We are doing this at the request of our rideshare customer, flying on board today's mission, which is our second smallsat rideshare on a Starlink mission to date. There are 2 BlackSky satellites sitting on top of the Starlink stack on behalf of our customer, Spaceflight. BlackSky is a global monitoring company that combines space assets with advanced AI and machine learning analysis to provide customers with a first-to-know advantage. Now, in order to make room for these 2 BlackSky satellites, today we'll be launching 57 Starlink satellites instead of the 60 we've traditionally launched in the past. If for some reason we have a hold on the countdown today, we do have a backup opportunity tomorrow at 12:50 a.m. Eastern. We are now at T-minus 11 minutes and 43 seconds, and all systems are go for an on-time liftoff this morning. On your screen is Falcon 9, our 2-stage liquid-fueled launch vehicle, getting ready for launch from Pad 39A. Falcon 9 stands 229 feet tall, or slightly taller than a 21-story building. Today's flight will be the 5th for this booster, which made its debut on our Demonstration 1 mission in March of last year, reflew on RadarSat 3 months later, and then supported 2 Starlink missions in January and April of 2020. This flight also marks the 10th reflight of Falcon 9 just this year. The bottom 2/3 of the vehicle is the first stage. It's designed to be reflown 10 or more times with minimal refurbishment between flights. If you look closely, you can see the soot markings still on the vehicle from its previous 4 flights. The first stage has 9 Merlin engines that do the bulk of the work to get Falcon 9 off the ground and up to the thinner parts of the Earth's atmosphere, before separating from the second stage and making its way back down to Earth for landing. Today, we'll be attempting to recover this first stage for the 5th time on our drone ship, Of Course I Still Love You, which is currently stationed in the Atlantic Ocean, about 330 nautical miles northeast of our Kennedy Space Center launch site. Now, above the first stage is the second stage, which has the single Merlin vacuum, or MVAC engine, which ignites after the first stage separates, propelling the second stage, along with the BlackSky and Starlink satellites, into a circular orbit above the Earth's surface. From there, the first of the BlackSky rideshare satellites will separate after about an hour into flight, followed by the second 5 minutes later. The 57 Starlink satellites will then deploy about 25 minutes after that at T+1 hour, 32 minutes, and 55 seconds. Now, that structure at the very top of the rocket is the 17-foot diameter payload fairing, which safely encloses the stack of 57 Starlink satellites and 2 BlackSky satellites. This fairing protects the satellites from aerothermal heating, aerodynamic loads, and contamination during ascent. Once we reach the vacuum of space, we'll jettison the fairing halves while second stage continues on to orbit. Now, as you can see, the fairing halves that we're using today are a brand new set, and we'll be attempting to recover them using our recovery ships Misstree and Mischief. 2 minutes before the fairings are set to land, the team will decide if conditions are good to make a safe catch attempt. Weather plays a big factor in the decision, as it can impact not only the sea states for the ships, but also the fairing's altitude, position, and speed, which impact how the fairing will fall back to Earth.
Good early morning. I'm John Isbrecher, Falcon 9 Principal Integration Engineer here at SpaceX. Now, Falcon 9 rolled out to the pad with the payload just over 24 hours ago. This is the third time we've rolled out Falcon 9 to the pad, following launch attempts on 26 June and 8 July. Through all of this, Falcon 9 has been trouble-free, as the delays have been weather-related and payload-related. Now, the launch director held the go, no-go poll for propellant loading and launch at T-minus 38 minutes, about half an hour ago. Now, the 7 members of the launch team confirmed they were ready to proceed, and we began propellant loading at T-minus 35 minutes. Now, as a reminder, Falcon 9 is a bipropellant vehicle. That means it uses both a fuel and an oxidizer. Our fuel is rocket-grade kerosene. You'll hear us also refer to it as RP1. And our oxidizer is super-chilled liquid oxygen, also called LOX. Now, currently, the RP1 and LOX are nearly fully loaded on both stages. In fact, fuel is completely loaded. Liquid oxygen will continue to load until the last 2 minutes of the countdown. That will ensure that this densified liquid oxygen is as cold as we can keep it to get the expected performance out of the Merlin engines. We're also loading ultra-cold helium. Similar to the LOX, being very cold, it lets us get the maximum amount into storage vessels on both the first and second stages. Now, we use helium to pressurize Falcon 9's tanks and to help pull the RP1 and the LOX through the Merlin engine turbopumps. Now, to make sure engine startup goes well, we also perform what we call engine chill. We'll ought to hear that in the background in about 20 seconds at T-minus 7 minutes. We begin flowing a small amount of that super chilled LOX into the Merlin engine turbopumps. This helps get them cold and avoid thermal shock to the system when we do the full flow of liquid oxygen through the turbopumps in the last couple of seconds.
Stage 1 engine chill has started.
And there we've got the confirmation. Stage 1 engine chill has started. In your picture, there's a white structure next to the Falcon 9. That's the strong back portion of the transport erector. This strong back portion provides the liquids, the gases, electrical connections to the second stage, as well as an air conditioning line up to the payload fairing. Now, in about 2 minutes, that strong back will retract slightly from the rocket, about 2 degrees. Then at T0, hydraulics will pull the strong back farther away from the Falcon 9 as it lifts off. Now, on the weather front, the good news is weather's cooperating. We were watching clouds to the west, but the probability of good weather has been increasing, and we should stay go for the last 6 minutes of the countdown. Also, the upper altitude winds are fairly calm for when this vehicle goes supersonic. So right now, the vehicle payloads and range are go for an on-time liftoff just over 6 minutes from now.
For those of you who don't know much about the Starlink program, our mission is to bring high-speed, low-latency internet to people all over Earth. Some of the most exciting opportunities for Starlink are rural or remote locations where traditional fiber or cable just isn't practical. On our June 7th mission, we launched the first Starlink satellite with a deployable visor to block sunlight from hitting the brightest spots of the spacecraft. This demo satellite, also known as VisorSat, is just one of the many actions SpaceX has taken in collaboration with leading astronomical groups to mitigate the effects of satellite reflectivity. We're still waiting for the satellite to reach its operational orbit. However, we're excited to report that all 57 of the satellites on today's mission do have sun visors, and all future satellites will be outfitted with these visors as well. It'll take a bit more time for our VisorSats to reach their operational orbit, and at that point, we'll see the full results of this effort. Now, today we also wanted to share a few updates on our rideshare program. SpaceX has launched some notable rideshare missions previously, including spaceflight's SSOA mission in December of 2018, and the New Centaurus Satu mission in February of 2019 that had a lunar lander on board. Today's Starlink mission marks the second official mission under SpaceX's SmallSat rideshare program, which gives small satellites flexible access to what is now the most flown operational rocket in the United States, Falcon 9. We have over 100 spacecraft slated to fly our rideshare missions, and that number will continue to grow under our multi-launch agreement with today's customer, Spaceflight. Under this agreement, Spaceflight reserves capacity to launch payloads on several SpaceX launches through the end of 2021, and it allows Spaceflight to package multiple payloads onto a single port to reduce costs for their end customer. We have a long working history with Spaceflight and look forward to continuing this partnership into the future.
We're coming up on 4 minutes from liftoff. Falcon 9 moving into the final stages of the countdown. Getting ready for the strong back to retract there on your screen. The clamp arms around stage 2 are opening up. Momentarily, we will see the Strongback move away about 2 degrees from the rocket. Now, first and second stages are both nearly fully loaded. We've got almost 1 million pounds of kerosene and liquid oxygen on board. Fuel's fully loaded on stage 1 and stage 2. And we are finishing liquid oxygen loading in the last 2 minutes of the countdown. It's that super chilled liquid oxygen that's creating those white clouds that you can see around the Falcon 9 as the bleed gaseous oxygen mixes with that warm, humid Florida air, and that gives you the condensation clouds that you see. Now, coming up at T-minus 60 seconds, you'll hear the call out of startup. That means the rocket's flight computers have taken over the Falcon 9 commands for the last minute of the countdown. Inside of two seconds, we light the Merlin 1D engines. We will mix TTEB, which is our ignition fluid, with liquid oxygen. That begins combustion. We then allow the fuel into the thrust chamber, and the engines come up to power for liftoff at T0. Inside of 3 minutes, we're closing out liquid oxygen loading on the first stage. Meanwhile, the Starlink and Black Sky payloads continue to be healthy. The Falcon 9 team's tracking no issues on the rocket, the weather's looking good, and the range is green for launch. A moment ago, we heard the call out that stage 1 LOX load was complete. Transport erector has reclined. Next major event will be stage 2 liquid oxygen loading completion.
Stage 2 LOX load is complete.
We've got stage 2 liquid oxygen loading complete. That means all propellants are fully loaded on the Falcon 9 first and second stages. The Chillen announcement was telling us that we've had enough time with the liquid oxygen running through the Merlin 1D turbopumps to get them down to the necessary temperatures to go into the ignition sequence. Currently, you can see a large white cloud coming off of the Strongback. That's normal. At this stage, we are now, having fully loaded all the propellants, we're bleeding back the liquid oxygen in the fuel out of the system so that we're getting a little bit of venting overboard, and that gives you the large white plume, again, as that warm, humid Florida air mixes with the cold gaseous oxygen to give you the clouds.
Falcon 9 is in startup.
Call out. Falcon 9's in startup. Flight computers are now running the Falcon 9. We're pressurizing the stages for flight, and we're waiting for the final go.
LD, go for launch.
With that, the SpaceX launch director has confirmed we're go for launch. So as we come up on T-minus 30 seconds, let's listen to the final countdown and watch as Falcon 9 takes our Starlink satellites and Black Sky satellites to orbit.
Stage 1 tanks pressing for flight.
T-minus 15 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition. And liftoff.
M1D propulsion is nominal.
T plus 40 seconds since the launch of Falcon 9. Propulsion is confirmed. Merlin's look nominal. Power and telemetry are confirmed nominal from the avionics engineer. We're throttling down right now on the Merlin 1D engines. Preparing for supersonic and max Q.
Mach 1.
got the call out from Mach 1. We have throttled the Merlins back up to full power. Next event will be maximum dynamic pressure. And there we are. We're going through the thickest portion of the atmosphere at the highest speeds. Now, as we continue to accelerate Falcon 9, the air density gets thinner and the loads on the vehicle decrease. A minute 30 seconds, trajectory continues to look good.
Back dechill.
That dechill indicates we're now beginning to bleed a little bit of liquid oxygen through the upper stage engine turbo pump to get it ready for ignition, coming up in just about 40 seconds from now. Nice view from the ground camera looking up the long plume coming out of the 9 Merlin 1D engines. Now, major event coming up will be main engine cutoff coming up at just after 2.5 minutes, called MECO. We shut off all the 9 engines. We'll separate the first stage from the second stage, and we will ignite the second stage engine called SES-1, the second stage engine start number 1. Beginning to throttle down.
MECO.
Stage separation confirmed.
And we've
Second
got
stage
successful MVAC full power ignition. The view on the right shows the MVAC engine, the second stage now taking over, carrying the Starlink and Black Sky satellites to orbit. On the left screen, the first stage is continuing without power to coast to apogee, and you can see the large titanium grid fins beginning to open with the lights of the United States in the background as we slowly head up the eastern coast of America. Now, next coming up will be fairing separation. There's a view of the fairing. And we confirm fairing separation. So the Falcon 9 second stage continues at full power, carrying the Starlink and Black Sky satellites to the first of 2 orbits. The first stage is continuing to coast to apogee, and then it will begin to fall back to Earth, and eventually 2 burns to land on the drone ship in the Atlantic Ocean. The trajectory right now continues to look right down the middle. Everything's looking good on Falcon 9. So as we come up on 4 minutes, we will remind you that we are attempting to catch and recover both fairing halves, now that they've separated, on our recovery vessels Ms. Tree and Ms. Chief. If we make a successful catch, we'll try to bring you these views live. Otherwise, check our social media accounts for updates. Right now, 4 minutes, 20 seconds of the mission. All is going well.
While stage 2 is doing its job there on the right, stage 1 is headed back home to Earth. Can't quite see it on the video on the left, but it is doing that, and it will do this by executing a series of 2 burns. The first burn is the entry burn, where 3 of the 9 M1D engines will light up and slow the stage down as it re-enters the upper part of the Earth's atmosphere. The second burn is the landing burn, and this is a single engine burn that brings the vehicle speed down rapidly in order to land on the drone ship. You can see on your screen that the second stage MVAC is still glowing and in the middle of its burn there, carrying our satellites to orbit. So stage 1 entry burn is going to start in just over a minute here at T plus 6 minutes and 21 seconds. Stage 1 is currently navigating home to Earth using both its grid fins, and that small spurt of light that you saw was a nitrogen burst from the attitude control system, which is nitrogen gas that helps to orient and guide the first stage as it heads home. There are 4 grid fins and 4 attitude control thrusters on the inner stage of the rocket. In just about 20 seconds here, we will hear the call out for the start of the stage 1 entry burn. This burn will last 20 seconds. Again, it's a 3-engine burn that will slow the first stage down as it enters the upper parts of the Earth's atmosphere.
Stage 1 empty, this is safe.
Stage 1 entry burn startup.
Heard confirmation of the stage 1 entry burn startup. You can see those backlit grid fins with those 3 engines burning there. Again, this burn lasts 20 seconds.
Stage 1 entry burn shutdown.
We've had confirmation of successful stage 1 entry burn, and we're about a minute away from our landing burn. The landing burn will start at T plus 8 minutes, and it is also about 20 seconds long.
Continue following normal trajectories.
The landing burn should bring us to our drone ship. Of course, I still love you in the Atlantic Ocean. So we have briefly lost that first stage view, but we should get it back when we get closer to the drone ship. We're about 30 seconds out from the stage 1 landing burn. Again, this is a single engine burn.
Stage 1 transonic.
It's the engine right in the middle. Stage 1 is transonic right now. We're about 10 seconds from landing burn start.
Stage 1 landing burn.
Heard the call out for the start of stage 1 landing burn. You can see the clouds sort of lighting up there.
Start internal guidance.
Stage 1 landing leg deploy.
Wow, look at that stage 1 sitting on our drone ship. Of course, I still
Stage
love
1
you.
landing.
That was a beautiful view of the stage 1 as it came down there, lighting the clouds up. And in just about 10 seconds here, we'll have second engine cut off there right on your screen.
Seco.
We've had confirmation of
Expected loss of signal, Cape.
second engine cutoff, and we're waiting for confirmation of good orbit out of this first burn here.
Nominal parking orbit insertion.
We're in a nominal orbit, and now we're about to enter a coast phase. So we're going to take a quick break, but we're going to leave you with an animation that shows you where we are in the coast. We'll be back at about T plus 46 minutes and 30 seconds for a second stage relight.
Acquisition of signal, Newfoundland. Expected loss of signal, Bermuda. Acquisition of signal, Goonhilly. Expected loss of signal, Newfoundland. Unexpected loss of signal, Goonhilly. Acquisition of signal. Diego Garcia.
Welcome back to the live webcast of Starlink 9. We had an on-time liftoff from pad 39A and a beautiful landing on our drone ship, Of Course I Still Love You. We are now awaiting the second relight of our second stage engine at T plus 47 minutes and 23 seconds. And this is the shortest burn that we will do, lasting only about 3 seconds. We also just got an update on our fairing halves. We did not manage to catch them this time, but we'll keep trying. We're just about 10 seconds out from second engine startup 2, and this is the shortest burn that we'll do. It is the second of 2 burns, and it will put us in the proper orbits to deploy the Black Sky satellites and Starlink satellites.
Stage 2 ignition. And shutdown.
Wow, you can see a beautiful video of that second stage as it successfully started up and shut down, lasting only about 3 seconds there. There were some beautiful plumes coming off.
Nominal orbital insertion.
You heard the call out. We have nominal orbital insertion, and now that we are in a good orbit, we'll be coasting again for the next 15 minutes or so, and we'll be back at about T plus 1 hour for the first of 2 payload deploys of the Black Sky satellites for our rideshare customer. See you in a bit.
Expected loss of signal, Diego Garcia. Acquisition of signal, Tasmania.
Welcome back to the webcast for our 10th Starlink mission and second mission with a rideshare customer. Today's rideshare includes the 2 Earth observation Black Sky microsatellites. Now we're about a minute away from the first of the 2 satellite deployments. We got here with a great launch of stage 1. We also got to see the landing on the drone ship in the Atlantic Ocean. We're getting to see a view right now looking from the camera on second stage all the way up the Starlink stack. And at the very top are the 2 Black Sky satellites. Second stage did 2 burns, put us into the circular orbit. We're about 400 kilometers circular right now, and we're coming up on the first of the 2 deployments, as I mentioned. That ought to be happening in about 30 seconds. We'll then go through a 6-minute period, actually about 5 minutes and change, and then we will get the second and final Black Sky rideshare satellite deployment. We're then going to go through another coast phase where we'll drop away briefly and then come back to see the 57 Starlink satellites deploy at T plus 1 hour and 33 minutes.
Global 7, deploy confirmed.
We've heard confirmation from the avionics engineer that Global 7, the first of the 2 Black Sky satellites, has successfully deployed. We're waiting to see if it might come into the field of view of the camera. This camera is mounted on what we call the payload attach fitting. It's a somewhat conical structure on the front of the second stage, and that's what the Starlink satellites are mounted on top of. That's the stack of satellites you see in the picture. And then at the very top are the 2 Black Sky satellites. And I think we're starting to get a view there. And right into the sunshine, or sun glare. Not sure yet if that's a reflection or... but I think we got a short view of it there, and then it's overpowered the field of view a little bit. Camera's still working though, so that's good. Now, as a reminder, way at the top of the stack, that's where the 2 satellites are. The second satellite will be separating in just over 4 minutes from now. Currently, as you can see on the map, the Falcon 9 second stage with the 57 Starlinks and 1 more Black Sky satellite. We're passing south of Australia, kind of halfway between Australia and the Antarctica continent. We're getting telemetry video down through the Tasmania ground station. Now we're beginning to switch camera views back, looking at the MVAC nozzle. We've got 2 cameras on the back end of the second stage, 1 on each side of the MVAC-D engine so that we can get a view almost all the way around to the engine when it's operating. Brings you those views as we head into space where the nozzle's glowing red hot. Right now you can see there's that white crystalline looking structure at the end of the tube. That is solid oxygen. So in the vacuum of space, that densified liquid oxygen we use when it actually comes out, that's a drain tube that helps vent some of it overboard. It'll actually freeze into a solid. So just think about that. That's oxygen that you breathe in solid form. It's actually fairly fluffy. It's not a very hard crystal, and you'll see them pop off if you watched our webcast before, or we may see one come off a little bit later. Now, currently I mentioned we're getting data through Tasmania. If you recall earlier, Yomei talked about to accommodate Black Sky, we went down to 57 Starlink satellites. Now, we had to do that because typically when we're flying Starlink, we go into an elliptical orbit after one burn, and then we separate the satellites, and their ion thrusters will lift them to the final orbit. But for the spaceflight customer with the Black Sky satellites, we needed to get to a circular orbit. So that required 2 burns, the second of which you saw just a little while ago when we got to apogee. That circularized the orbit, but in order to do that, that took more propellant out of the vehicle, so you couldn't carry quite as much mass. So we traded off 3 of the Starlinks, so we're at 57 Starlinks on the stack. Again, another view there looking back on the MVAC-D engine. That's the solid oxygen out on the overboard drain line that you can see in that one camera view. Now, currently, second stage is fairly passive. We deployed the first of the 2 satellites. We don't do any maneuvering, we're just holding it there. What we essentially are doing is occasionally we're letting a little bit of pressure out the back end of the vehicle. We want to make sure that when it's time to deploy the second satellite in about 1.5 minutes, that we aren't maneuvering the second stage. You know, this is kind of, you can do a couple of things with the second stage for satellite deployment. One is you can go into an idle mode. That's where you're not commanding any of the attitude control thrusters, you're not opening any vent valves. You want the stage to be passive so that when the satellite separates, there's not the chance the second stage may be rotating or slewing a little bit. The other way that we'll see a little bit later with the Starlinks is you can spin the stage. That'll give a little bit of gyroscopic stability or rigidity to the satellites as they come off of the stack. So for the Black Sky satellites right now, we're getting ready for the second deployment, and we're just leaving the second stage in an idle mode where it's not maneuvering and giving good conditions for the deployment. The Black Sky satellites themselves are each held on to the very top of the stack with what they call a light band. That opens up with a motor, and then springs slowly push away the satellites, as you saw with the first one, moving away slowly. Expect to come to the next deploy in about 20 seconds. We're going to listen in for the avionics engineer confirmation.
Global 8 deploy confirmed.
And there it is, Global 8 deploy confirmed. The second of the 2 Black Sky satellites that are on top of the large stack that you see there. So we've got the first 2 out. There are 57 more to go. So right now, we've got, as I said, 2 Black Sky satellites on behalf of our customer Spaceflight. Now that makes a total of 6 Black Sky satellites in the constellation. And we want to wish a bon voyage to the Black Sky satellites. It was our pleasure to give you a lift today into Earth orbit. Now, as I mentioned earlier, stage 2 is going to continue to coast in this orbit for another 24 minutes. Now, during this time, we will slowly spin the second stage along its central axis. As we come back to camera view, you may be able to tell it's fairly hard to see that we're spinning. It's very slow. But that will provide the stability that the Starlink satellites need as they space themselves out over time after they separate from the second stage. So with that, we're going to take another break right now. We'll leave you with the animation shows where we are in the coast phase, and we'll be back around T+1 hour and 32 minutes, a little under 24 minutes from now, for the deployment of our 57 Starlink satellites.
Expected loss of signal, Tasmania.
Hello. Welcome back again to the webcast for Starlink 9. Just before we went on break, we saw the successful deployment of the 2 BlackSky satellites, which were ride-sharing with Starlink. The mission manager has confirmed that BlackSky has successfully acquired signal from both Global 7 and Global 8.
Acquisition of signal, Vandenberg.
We are less than a minute away from the deployment of our 57 Starlink satellites. You can see them appearing on and off on your screen here as we get signal from our ground stations. Deployment for these satellites will start at about T plus 1 hour, 33 minutes, and 8 seconds. Again, the second stage will slowly spin and deploy the stack of 57 Starlink satellites. Coming up in just under 10 seconds here.
Starlink tension rod separation confirmed.
Heard the call out that we've had a successful deployment of our Starlink satellites. Oh, you can see the video just came back here of them floating away into space. To date now, we've sent 595 Starlink satellites into orbit. You can see
Signal, South Texas.
on your screen there, the satellites are slowly separating from each other, and shortly they will deploy their solar arrays. Now, over the course of the next few days and weeks, these satellites will use their onboard ion thrusters to distance themselves from each other and enter their operational orbits.
Well, that brings our webcast to a close, and what a week it's been here at SpaceX. Just 4 days ago, we saw Crew Demo 2 successfully return home with NASA astronauts Doug Hurley and Bob Behnken. On Tuesday, Starship took flight at our South Texas location, and now we've capped it off with our 10th successful Starlink mission to date. As we watch the Starlinks drifting away, getting ready for their weekend, we'd like to thank you, our customer, Spaceflight, the Federal Aviation Administration for licensing the launch, and the 45th Space Wing and NASA Kennedy Space Center for their range support today. Now, if you're interested in future updates about Starlink launches, as well as general updates about future service availability, head over to starlink.com and sign up. As always, thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you next launch.